Hey, what's good, guys? Today we are going to be talking about some ex-vegan drama, a lot of it. So go and get yourself a nice ham sandwich with some provolone cheese or some lasagna with some ground beef. Just get yourself something nice to snack on while I provide the entertainment for today. Now we got a lot to talk about, so I really don't want to waste anybody's time, but I do need to give you a proper intro. Well, there's been a lot of ex-vegans, and in fact, there's actually an ex-vegan Reddit that is just full of people talking about their stories on, how long they were vegan, why they stopped being vegan, what struggles they had while they were vegan, or what struggles they had being with people that were vegan. There's so much, and it's so unbelievably entertaining. So you're gonna make sure you definitely have your snacks for this shit. No, I ain't even gonna bother spoiling or introducing these stories. You're just gonna hear it live. So do not change your diet or other core parts of yourself for a partner. I became vegan for my ex. She did not force me, but she did not create a relationship context in which it was realistically possible for us to be together and for me to be non-vegan. Yeah, that's pretty typical. She had another partner who she was with for much longer than me. An important part of their bond was shared veganism. It was clear from the beginning that the relationship was much more important to her than I ever was. In the early days of our relationship, we weren't official because she had feelings for me, but didn't want to label the relationship. It was a crazy making context. I have no idea what they mean by that. I changed a lot about myself to get her to love me. Becoming vegan was part of that. I remember having the thought, it's not so bad. I can figure it out, and then if she loves me, it'll all be worth it. I'm gonna chime in real briefly here. This is not an Am I the Asshole? I know some of you guys might be thinking that. No, these are just ex-vegan stories, and they're very, very interesting overall. But this is a common thing. I mean, my sister even did something like this before, where she became vegan to try to, get the attention of somebody else who was vegan. Didn't end up working out, but that was an attempt. It's a common thing. I mean, a lot of people are willing to adapt their lifestyle choices to accommodate someone else's, especially if it feels like it's a necessity. Some people are willing to change religions for the same purpose. It's a very normal thing, and it doesn't shock me that this happens with veganism too, because you guys got to remember, veganism is not just a diet like most of us would like to believe that it is, but those within this community believe that it is an ethical stance against exploitation of animals, which involves not consuming any animal products whatsoever. It's different than being vegetarian. That's why you don't see insane vegetarians most of the time. Like, if you're gonna be an insane preachy asshole, you're probably gonna be a vegan, not a vegetarian. Anyway, let's continue. I convinced myself that it was my choice and my values, but it made it very hard to manage my diabetes and eating disorder. Eventually, she did tell me, not knowing I had changed for her, that anyone she would date would have to be vegan. That confirmed that the implicit messages I was getting, change in these ways or I'll dump you, were true. Vegan food is really good, and veganism can be good and healthy if you freely choose it. I still want to experiment with plant-based diet and cooking, but I can't afford to be so restricted for both my health and my other relationships. The veganism made eating with friends and family hard, made managing blood sugars complicated because the veganism diet is carb heavy. Type 1 diabetic here, they have a point. Original poster has a point. You are going to be consuming much more carbs on plant-based foods. Plant-based foods tend to have way more carbs, and meat has virtually none. Most of the time, meats really do have basically zero carbs. So somebody who is diabetic, eating more meat and stuff is actually very good for you. The less carbs you're taking in as a diabetic person, the better for you. And irritated my eating disorder because it was trading one set of food rules, I shamed myself for another. It didn't even work. She still dumped me. And one major reason she gave was that I changed myself. There was not a way to win. I would have been dumped either way, and I see that now. She never forced me to do anything, but she also never made me feel secure enough to be fully myself. I thought the issue was specific things like the veganism. It was deeper issues of compatibility and her emotional availability. I started slowly including a few animal products back into my diet. I think I still like mostly plant-based, but it's my choice. If I'm in another relationship that depends on me changing anything major about myself to be loved, I am dumping that person instead of giving up who I am. I love myself. I am a good person, and I am worthy of love and being chosen without having to constantly change myself for a partner. And I also like eating chicken. Anyone who requires, either explicitly through demands or implicitly through rewarding you with closeness, then you comply and pushing you at distance when you don't, you to change yourself for them to be in a relationship with you is not worth dating. They may be a lovely person, but they are not the kind of person who can love you in the way you deserve. A lot of vegans are lovely people, and my ex is a lovely person. But this situation was really unhealthy for me. This was a wake-up call for me to challenge my pattern of changing myself for partners, sometimes before they even ask. If you have a partner pressuring you to be vegan or change anything else about yourself, stand up for yourself and leave if you have to. You deserve love no matter of your diet. Thank you for listening. So I think the original poster had a very, very nice message that can apply to anybody, you know, outside of just veganism. And they make it very general too. They mention that it was because of veganism that they kind of came to this conclusion. However, it does apply to just about anybody who feels the need to change drastically to fit into a relationship. Now, like I said, this isn't an Am I the Ass, so we're not here to like judge anything. However, I do think it is interesting to talk about the vegan person's perspective. And you know what? I want to give them credit, actually. I know, might surprise you, especially since you're on a channel that usually just talks shit about vegan folk, but things aren't black and white with me. I talk shit about certain aspects of vegans and certain aspects of veganism. Now this, however, I think is actually a mature approach. She knows that this person isn't all in on veganism, and I think that was a big part of it. They had to change to adapt their lifestyle against their own. And they didn't actually want them to do that. Now, they're perfectly justified in wanting a relationship with a purely vegan partner. Everybody's justified in wanting whatever it is they want out of the relationship for fulfillment. And in her case, the vegan's case here, somebody who wasn't truly like at the heart, you know, vegan, like didn't truly stand with what was needed, you know, for this lifestyle, isn't what she wanted. She wanted somebody that was like her, just like her. I'm a vegan because I can't stand for the exploitation of animals and I don't care about my health. It's more so like what she wants, because the truth is, if she developed any health issues, she'd probably just continue business as usual and ignore veganism being the cause of it if it were to be the cause of it. And this person's like, oh, my health is declining and this isn't good for me. Like, I don't want to be vegan, you know, but I'm forcing myself to be with this person. Like, that's not her cup of tea. And that's totally acceptable. So I think that's a mature thing to do. Get what you want out of your relationship. And if that's not it, then you move on. So I commend both of them. I mean, I commend this lad for taking it well and learning not to change for people. You shouldn't do that. That's the lesson that goes out to anybody. You got to drastically change who you are just to fit a relationship. Then it ain't for you, dog. Move on and try again. All right, let's go on to our next story. This one's really short. Another vegan doctor dies. Dr. Dr Montgomery has died aged 59. What gives? I believe it was a heart attack. Okay, so the reason this is so interesting is a lot of people are considering the possibility that he passed due to, you know, something related to his diet, something related to his vegan diet. It is an interesting situation, to tell you the truth, because this guy was a cardiologist and he was a heart doctor and supposedly died from a heart attack, which is very bizarre at his age. But obviously there's a list of different reasons. I mean, who knows? There's really no information at all that we can at least observe that would indicate what happened to him. But what I want to talk about in particular is that when people that are vegan, when they die or something happens to them health-wise, they do typically avoid blaming the diet, right? They will deflect and blame anything else but their diet. And for those that do blame the diet, the people that become a part of this ex-vegan community, they just get told, well, you didn't do it right. And that's why I think these comments in particular are quite interesting. Like, there's this person here that says that he didn't do it right in quotations, and they say, in all seriousness though, I predict if even talked about by vegans, don't think I've seen anything yet, there will be a lot of dismissals and blaming literally anything but his diet. And then, you know, there's this comment, exactly, the risk of doing it wrong and dying. How about doing what humanity has been doing for millions of years and eating your fucking beef? My dear deteriorating anti-cruel, only cruelty to myself is allowed. Vegans are sadists. Now, this is a particularly interesting comment. I'm not going to read it all. But ASCVD has nothing to do with plant versus meat. It is fructose. If you eat meat plus fructose, you die. If you eat plants plus fructose, you die. Fructose is a mitochondrial toxin, the same type of poison as cyanide. If you consume poison, you will shorten your life. This isn't a surprise to anyone who doesn't have type 3 diabetes. I don't know what they mean by type 3. Who the fuck has type 3? What is that? And then they go on to talk about how the carnivore diet cuts out fructose. Anyway, there's this whole discussion on this thread about what happened to this doctor and, you know, how they pass so soon, you know, being on a vegan diet. I don't know. There's no telling if veganism had anything to do with it. There's just really no information about it. Just thought it was something interesting to mention. Now, this is the last post we're going to talk about. Recognize vegan gaslighting. Debunking vegan propaganda. I see vegans still come here with their nonsensical advice that is usually, you did it wrong. When a belief system creates rules where only advice that supports the ideology is valid, anyone who questions it is labeled ignorant, weak, or not real enough. Failure is always the individual's fault, never the ideology's. It never stops being about ethics or health and starts looking more like a closed-loop dogma or even a cult. Veganism has different forms, but online it really acts like a cult. Closed-look logic that tries to be inescapable and have total control over your choices. The original idea behind veganism is rooted in reducing harm or practical and possible, but when it becomes, even if you're sick, it's your fault, never the diet's, it's no longer about compassion, it's about control. Enforcing vegan professionals to only give advice within the vegan framework limits science, reason, and, you know, basic decency. A good doctor or dietitian should care more about you staying healthy than you staying vegan. But they tell you to contact a vegan professional. But if vegan professional would advise against veganism, they cease to be real vegan in the eyes of their cultist. It's all gaslighting aimed to keep you in the cult since vegan cultists' own worldview depends on choices of others. They have no choice than to keep you in the cult to avoid losing their own identity. It's that they make their diet their identity, and any criticism of their diet, and any criticism of the diet is criticism of their self or them. It's definitely not healthy. I think it's obvious vegan diets suit better for some individuals than others. It's not sustainable for most people long term though, not even possible to start for others. Bigger problem than diet itself is this deeply problematic and sick worldview of moral absolutism veganism is deeply connected to. I mean, this person said pretty much what most people think when it comes to veganism is, yeah, it's very culty. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there in the world that are vegan and have nothing to do with the inner circle of the cult, you know? And that's fine. But a lot of people as well choose to not even identify as vegan just because of the negativity that goes along with the term. And the truth is, when I first made my main channel and I eventually started talking about like vegan teacher Tosh Peterson and stuff, I had way more respect for vegans overall, but that all changed. It all changed. I still have respect for some vegans, but it just, the cult itself or veganism itself, the respect for it dwindled very quickly. And the reason for that was, even though I was making these videos talking about vegan teacher Tosh Peterson, you know, two extreme outliers, and then of course vegan gains came into the picture, it was when Earthling Ed came into the picture. When I first talked about Earthling Ed, my comments changed very quickly with some very angry vegans, and it made me realize something. Because when I made my video about Earthling Ed, yeah, it was lighthearted and I was kind of making fun of him, making fun of his accent and, you know, stuff like that. But then I was, of course, debunking some of the bullshit that he puts out, the propaganda. You know, this guy literally has a bookshelf full of his own books. And not only that, but one of his books is literally like how to argue with a meat eater and win every time. And this had my head scratching. Like, is this really about reducing exploitation of animals, or is this about control? Is this about manipulation? What is this? Because if the forefront of everything is reducing the exploitation of animals, it's for encouraging veganism for people that are willing to do so. You know, if that's, you know, the goal, then why are you trying to teach people to be belligerent assholes and fight with people that disagree with them? Like, your ideology, your lifestyle choice is yours and yours alone. So the fact that Earthling Ed was encouraging people to go out and verbally fight with people about veganism as some sort of way to force them to change, that just rubbed me the wrong way about the dude. I'm like, I think he might be more manipulative than even the two front runners that I had been talking about previously. And I brought that to everybody's attention in these videos. And then the comments were people that were absolutely livid that I would dare talk negatively about Earthling Asshole, his very questionable practices that absolutely deserved criticism. I received so much hate from the few vegans that watched my content purely for selfish reasons, because they liked the fact that I was taking down people like Tosh and taking down people like Vegan Teacher and Vegan Gains and condemning them for being such a thorn in the side of the cult. So they watched for that purpose. They liked that. But when I talked about someone like Earthling Ed, who's actually more manipulative and actually possibly even worse because he feeds people so much misinformation about veganism, but he does it in a more polite, gentle way.
Homesteaders may talk about wanting to make sure that the animals have a nice life and a compassionate death, but humans homestead for themselves, not for the animals. They homestead because of how it makes them feel. Homesteading is also often portrayed as a rejection of the fakery, materialism of modern society. It's a return to our oh so humble and simple roots, producing food ourselves. And yet the complete irony in all of this is the privilege that often goes hand in hand with people who homestead. I mean, think about it.
You know, something that is actually more likely to have a positive effect on someone. What they don't understand is that what it really boils down to is that veganism is not healthy for everyone, and neither should it be forced upon people. If somebody wants to become vegan, it should be for their own personal reasons, their choice. Stripping autonomy away from everybody is disgusting. I mean, we have free will for a reason. Of course, when you have people like Earthling Ed telling everybody, oh, there's absolutely no reason to consume animals ever. There's no reason to have your own homestead, to raise your own animals for meat consumption or whatever it is. It's like you're fucking lying to people, and this information is actually genuinely harmful because the vast majority of people cannot and will not thrive on a vegan diet. It is fact. Everybody's body is different. I mean, even if you just look at people from race to race, right? I got fluffy, curly, mushroom-shaped hair, right? And darker skin with more melanin. The reason for that is because, well, my ancestors came from a much hotter climate than I live in now. This sort of adaptation was fucking necessary for survival. So yeah, generally, I'm gonna do better in the sun. My wife actually brought this up. It was really interesting. She was like, have you ever had a sunburn? And I say, no. I asked her that question, and it's more than you can fucking count. And it's not because she's been out in the sun way longer than I have, more exposure. No, if anything, I've probably had way more exposure to the sun. She's more of an inside person, but I've never had a sunburn. And she has. Why? Because our bodies are fucking different. This is no different than the person-to-person conversation we can have when it comes to veganism. Some people's bodies can handle this sort of nutrient deprivation for a much longer time than somebody else. Even when it comes to weight gain, right? I don't gain weight very fucking easily. And I know there's a lot of people around me that do. They can eat the exact same amount of calories as me, do the exact same activities throughout the day, gain weight while I lose it. That tells you everything that you need to know. And so them, like people like Earthling Ed, even though he's nicer and calmer about it, telling you that eating animals or animal products is completely unnecessary, unjustifiable, is harmful. Because then you have people believing it, feeling guilty, and they stop eating meat, and say they do it for 15 years and then the health issues kick in, and now their gut biome is all fucked up, and now they can't even eat meat if they wanted to, because they were fed lies by people like Earthling Ed and all these other vegan activists. Because the truth is, they don't give a fuck about you as a human being. They do not care about humans at all. They care about cows, chickens, pigs, lambs, sheep, ducks, etc., not you. And that's why when you disagree with them, you're enemy number one, and they'll do anything in their power to make you feel like shit.